Hello and welcome to Touchstone Live Fitness. My name is Sam. Thank you for joining me for yoga. If you've been with us before, welcome back. If you've never taken a class with us, welcome. Today's class is a gentler practice focused on the wrists that I hope will bring us maybe some ease, some release, and some feelings of function into our wrist space that help us out in whatever it is that we do. So what you'll need for today's class is a blanket, and I highly recommend having a block. If you have a yoga block at home, that's a great prop to have. We're going to be seated for a good portion of this class. So to make that more comfortable, the blanket or the block may come in handy. You can always, of course, use a pillow, or if you have a bolster, you can totally take a bolster and place that underneath you. But we're going to begin our practice today by setting ourselves up in a seated position, which I'm already in. And as you go to set yourself up, ankles or shins crossed, please check in to see that your hips are slightly higher than your knees. We want to do that just to give our lower back a little bit of support and some hip space, inner hip space, right? If the knees are coming up really high, just making things a little more open and comfortable. So for me, I'm set up and my knees are a little bit higher than my hips, so I'm actually going to fold this blanket up one time and give myself a little bit more support. Set yourself up on your blanket or your block and make yourself comfy. Yeah, so now the knees are lower than the hips. This feels a little bit easier in the hip space and also in the low back. And we're gonna begin here. All right, so what we'll do today, as much as this is gentle for more reasons than not, might actually be a little bit uncomfortable. We might go through some really challenging movements, and it may not feel great. So I want you to do your best to listen to your body and stay tuned in, and remember that this is a working relationship, and what we're doing in this practice is zooming in on one space. And as we zoom in on that one space, the hope is that we start to cultivate a higher relationship with that part of ourselves and how it supports the rest of the body, and how it supports us in doing all the things that we love to do and all the things that we have to do. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page, that this may not be the most gentle class in terms of sensation when we do some of the things that we do. Okay, let's give ourselves a moment to just settle in. Okay, if you're in your seated position, sit up tall. Roll the shoulders back over the hips. Draw the earlobes back over the shoulders. Well, let's take a few moments, closing the eyes, and really just giving ourselves a chance to transition our awareness. Allow your hands to rest wherever they are, and if it's uncomfortable, feel free to move them to a space that is more comfortable. Soften your brow, relax your cheeks, relax your jaw, and relax your throat. Just let your breath be natural, moving in and out of the nose. Outer body soft. Awareness is now inward more than it is out. A class like today is a big reminder of how this bigger thing can be made up of smaller parts. So our practice today is to bring the awareness to one of the smaller parts that makes up the whole. and just get into a relationship with it. We're not going to force anything to happen today. And we're simply going to move with awareness. Now, if you have any deeper personal intention that you'd like to bring into this practice, feel free to invite it in here. If there is no other intention, that's okay too. Let's start to blink the eyes open. Okay, let's get ourselves into this practice. So let's start by taking the hands out in front of us. And hopefully there's some calm energy going on here so that as we go, we can keep it. And when you look forward, line up your wrists about as high as your shoulders, like you're holding a tray in both of your hands. And as you do this, notice the shoulders and relax them down the back, which might be a huge part of the practice for this first bit. So the shoulders stay down on the back as we turn the palms open as much as possible. So really do imagine that you have this tray on your hands, and you can imagine whatever you want on those trays, but you're really trying to hold them up and not let them tip over. Now, as you do that, spread your fingers apart as much as you can. And I don't know about you, but this for me is already starting to invite quite a burn into my forearms. And just the action of taking my arms up and out, the shoulders start to get a little fiery too. So just listen to these things and the relationship that we start to understand. Okay, now we're going to start turning the palms to face down, spinning the forearms down, keeping the fingers spread wide and apart, and remembering to lower the shoulders down the back. And you're really trying to spread your fingers apart, away from each other as much as you can. Keeping the breath as steady as possible, which might be a little harder. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I'm totally getting warm here. For all of my friends who are watching this, who climb, the forearm space can fatigue out pretty fast if we don't work on the wrists. Okay, let's flip the palms back up, doing the best that we can to not let the shoulders do any of the talking, right? If they start to lift up, keep them down. You can think about your triceps, which is the outer upper arm, as being spinning down toward the ground as you do this. Not a lot of movement, but still totally challenging. We're going to go one more time and spin the palms down to face the ground. Spreading the fingers wide and apart. One more breath here. Relax the upper traps down the back. And then pull the elbows in at your sides. Make some fists. And make a few circles with your wrists. And maybe notice any cracking that you have going on in the wrist space. And circle the wrists the other way. My shoulders are totally on fire. Right? The connection between the hands and the shoulders for a lot of us can be pretty deep. Especially when we use our upper bodies a lot. Okay, and now we're going to take the arms back out. Same thing. Palms facing up though this time to start. And then lower the shoulders down the back again. And then start to work your fingertips down toward the ground. So opening up your palms toward my voice. Go as much as you can. Extend through the wrist. Fingertips toward your body, or fingernails rather, toward your body. And then you're going to keep the palms pressing forward. So imagine pushing your hands against a wall. Just make sure that your shoulders aren't rounding off your back, right? Keep the shoulders back and down. And as you push your hands against a wall, start to spin the fingertips out away from the middle and then up toward the sky. And now you are doing the same thing except with your palms forward, fingertips up. And we're going to hold here for 3, fingernails toward the shoulders. And then gently lower the palms flat toward the ground with the arms still lifted. All right, so just taking the wrists out of extension. Pause here. Flip the palms over again. And now we're going to curl from the fingertips. We're going to do a full contraction all the way up the arm. Full flexion up the arm. Okay, so you're going to curl your fingertips toward the bottom knuckles. And then you're going to curl your knuckles towards your wrists. And then you're going to curl your forearms to bend your elbows until you're flexing your biceps and your knuckles go to your shoulders. Relax the shoulders down, soften. And now we're going to unfold everything. Keep your elbows lifted and unfold at the elbow first, keeping the backs of the hands pressing out in front of you. You should feel, not should, but you might feel that stretch along the back of your forearm. And then start to extend the wrist again. Drop the fists down and then uncurl the fingers and take the fingertips down toward the ground. This is where we started a bit ago. And now spin the fingertips up toward the sky. Whew, a whole lot of burn going on here. And then you're going to lower the palm flat toward the ground again. And then relax your hands. That's a lot of work. Okay, give your shoulders a roll back. Breathe in and out of your nose. And then give the shoulders a roll forward. All right, so we've just done a lot of activating of the wrists. And just making connections, right? The whole chain, the wrist, what is below the wrist and what is above the wrist and how are they moving and how are they moving together. Keep rolling out the shoulders. Let out any built-up tension from just those exercises. And then relax your shoulders down the back. If you were rolling your shoulders forward, just take them back once and pull the chest slightly more open. And then take your hands out in front of you again. And now we're going to do a little bit of stretching. We're going to go back and forth. Okay, so taking your hands out in front of you, we're going to flip the left palm to face down, right hand is up toward the sky. And now we're going to practice just going a little deeper into the rotation of the forearms, which again, that's your connection to your wrist as well as your elbow. You're going to work the thumb tips down as much as you can on both sides. Keep holding that. Do your best not to let your shoulders get involved. Yeah, so the thumbs are working down. And then we're going to twist the other way and flip the palms the opposite direction. So start spinning your right forearm to the left as well as your left forearm to the left so that your hands are in opposite positions from where they started. And as I turn my right thumb down toward the ground, I'm doing that on accident so much that my right shoulder is lifting. So I'm going to re-drop my right shoulder, keep that and continue spinning the right thumb tip. Really focus on the right thumb tip and the left thumb nail. Spin those down to get into your wrist and forearm. And then let's come back and relax. Again, shoulders rolling. This also can help us get increase in circulation. Some of you might already be feeling tingliness and some warmth. As always, if anything feels uncomfortable or like your body's informing you to back off a little bit, just remember not to go so deep. You don't have to go so deep. But one really nice thing about the exercises that we're doing, at least for now, is that they're active. And because we're doing them actively and we're not really forcing our weight against anything to create a more passive stretch, we're getting a lot of activity that is really based on the muscles doing the work. Yeah, so we're gonna do another round of those stretches and we're gonna flip the left palm up and the right palm to face down. Take the shoulders in toward each other and down the back. Spread your fingers wide and apart. Keep your shoulders steady as you tip the pinkies to the right. On the right side, you're going to tip, 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 and keep going. If you can get more rotation, go for it. Keep rotating. You might flip your palms all the way upside down. My right palm is not flipping all the way upside down, whereas my left palm totally rotated all the way around. And then keep this movement in the wrists. Rotate the other way. Rotate the other way. No shoulder action. Come back to neutral. Flip your hands the other way. And let's do that the other way. Shoulders stay down the back. Arms are engaged so that they're steady. And then we're going to take the pinkies down on the left. Keep going. And you'll notice if you look at the screen, if you're watching me, I'm going really slow because I need to go so slow in order to make this all about my wrists and less and less and less about my shoulders doing this movement, right? And I'm going to show you an example while you go, right? If I turn my shoulders, if I get my shoulders involved, I can totally flip my hands as far as possible using them. And what we're really looking to do is not use them. Keep the shoulders packed in and down on the back. And then go the other way. Start sweeping the pinky tips to the left. Keep going. One might go further than the other, that's okay. Just playing with movement in this space. Okay, let's come back to the middle and then lower the hands and take your shoulder rolls. We need so many of these. When we work on the wrist, we need this like so much. Or maybe I'm just speaking for myself. My shoulders are seriously on fire. Okay, let's get just a couple more of these in. Okay, now we're going to move into doing a small bit of what we'll call self-massage, where we're using our hands on our forearms and our wrists and our hands to get just some movement and to kind of get in touch with what's going on here. Nothing too serious, nothing too intense. We're really just, again, getting into a practice of building an awareness. And I really love doing this before I climb and after I climb. As a before climbing thing, it's really cool because you're using your hands. So as you're massaging over the other forearm, you're kind of cultivating a little pump. And then after climbing, of course, it feels really nice to just massage out the forearms, get some circulation going, which is helpful for continued movement. Okay, so let's start on the left side and just bring your left arm in next to you with the right hand. You can start up about as high as the elbow and just give yourself a little massage. And we're not looking to go super, super deep, but this does help us start to notice what's going on in these spaces. You've got your flexors, which are in the front of the forearm, right? And they're going up and over and across. And then you've got your extensors, which are the back of your forearm. And just giving yourself a little bit of a massage to feel out those spaces. Might find some spaces that you want to stay in for a little bit longer. Might be able to make some connections between where you're massaging and the fingers that are involved with that. You can even move your fingers around. Right? Press gently and just open up the hand, close the hand, and see what's firing in the hand that's massaging the forearm. So much circulation is being sent into these spaces. And then let's start to move the right hand to the left wrist and just give it a slight squeeze on the outer edges. Just a little baby squeeze, like don't go super hard, just a light squeeze, and open and close a fist on the left side. just lightly. And then massage out the middle. Right, so right in the middle of the front of the wrist, right in the middle of the back of the wrist. And then you can massage out the hand into the fingertips. And then we'll move to the other side. And maybe just notice what it feels like on that left side. I feel like my fingers are awake now. Right, and I've been doing some finger training every day, and this is definitely bringing some life to my fingers. Okay, let's go ahead and start working on the right side. Right, and again, we're remembering that the wrist is not just living in the body on its own, and we're making a connection to everything else. There are lots of different ways to play around with the wrist space, and this is just one. Okay, so we're massaging around, feeling for things, being gentle. This is not deep tissue. This is not time for deep tissue work. Although if you're noticing that you really want that, that's great too. Oh yeah, and you can like totally give yourself a little extra love wherever it feels like it might be needed or wanted. Remembering that there is muscular tissue both on the front and the back of the forearm. If it starts to feel like pressing more intensely is doing good things, great. If you're starting to notice that there's like a lot of pain, let's back off from the pain so that we're giving ourselves what our body understands as gentle or gentler. Right? You can open and close the hand while keeping just a light bit of compression around the forearm in all spaces. Pumping some blood into the body, very, very specifically. And then massaging the outsides of the wrists just a little bit. I'm giving it like the tiniest squeeze, so I'm like re-emphasizing how light this squeeze is. Definitely don't, super grip your wrist, right? Just lightly enough to feel a bit of energy, and then we'll switch to the front and the back of the wrist, right in the middle, and massage that out. Massaging into the ever crunchy carpal tunnel area while moving about. And then if you want, you can finish off by giving a light bit of love to your fingers, your palm. Then shaking it out. There's so much energy here, and if you look at your hands, got some color going on for sure. Okay, now from here we're going to come up out of our seat. So if you want to use the blanket that you're sitting on top of as a prop underneath your knees, feel free to do that. We're going to be on our knees for a little while now. Okay, so I'm going to set up my blanket so that I can prop my knees right on top of them, and we're setting up in a table position. So start by lining up the hips on top of the knees, and then set up your shoulders on top of your wrists a little bit wider than your shoulders side to side. Look at your index fingers, point them forward, and you can either tuck your toes or you can point them back. It's up to you. Spread your fingers wide and apart. And make that about as natural as you can. It may not be natural to spread your fingers apart in the first place, but just don't worry about doing what we did in the beginning, which is like really webbing them apart. Now that you have your hands steady, start to shift your weight very mildly in a circle to the left to start changing the distribution of weight between the corners of the hand. Okay, the four corners of the hand, which is what I use to kind of map out the hand and the weight, is the base of the first finger knuckle, the base of the thumb, the base of the pinky finger knuckle, and the heel of the hand. And just feeling around for these corners as you circle very lightly over the wrists and just feel how that changes the weight. Let's make those circles the other way. Not really big. This isn't like spinal, flowy body stuff. This is really just making sure that we can feel how the weight can be distributed into the outer edges of the hands and the inner edges of the hands, and we're just starting to put weight in different parts. And now come back to center where the shoulders are right above the wrists, and equalize the weight between the four corners so that the base of the first finger knuckle, the base of the thumb, the pinky finger knuckle, the base of it, and the heel of the hand are all down on the ground. And then do your best to keep that. If you need to, you can walk your knees forward to make this easier. And we're going to try our very best to get each digit off of the mat at a time. So let's start by looking down at the ground and lifting up the thumb tips without lifting up any other part of the hand. Keep the base of the thumb down. Lower the thumb tips and start to try to lift the index finger without lifting the first finger knuckle at the base. And then put that down. It's okay if you don't get a lift, just do your best to lift as much as you can. Let's try to lift up the middle finger without lifting anything else. Lower it down. Do your best to lift up the ring fingertip. This one might be really hard for some of us. My right ring finger's not lifting, but do your best. And then lower it down, and then try to lift the pinky fingertip off the ground. And then lower it down. If you walked your knees up like I did, walk your knees back. And start to come up onto the tips of your fingers. Push the ground physically away, come up onto the tips of your fingers, and then push the ground away and come back down onto your palms. We'll do that 4 more times. Push down until you're up on the tips of the fingers, and then allow the palms to flatten and the fingers to flatten. 3 more times, push down, come up high under the tips of the fingers, and then come down flat onto the palms. A couple more times, pressing up, lowering down, pressing up, lowering down. All right. Now, once you have your palms flat, start to shift the weight back toward the hips, and at the very back, float the fingertips off the ground, reaching your fingernails toward your shoulders. And then shift the weight forward, plant your palms, shift the weight forward past your wrists as much as feels right. We'll do that twice more. Shift the hips back. As soon as they go back, lift the fingertips up, relax the shoulders down, shift forward. Shoulders go as far past the wrists as feels okay. You don't force anything, and we'll do 1 more. Hips back, fingertips lift, shoulders down. Shift forward, and go as far as feels okay. Let's come back to the middle. Start to flip the fingertips out away from the front of the mat, so off to the sides. Now, we've gone pretty far into this section of the class, and I failed to mention that if putting your palms flat down on the ground is uncomfortable in the wrists, we want to come back to thinking about this exercise. When we curl the fingertips back, right? How much are we able to do that without something pushing against it? And if the answer is simply that we're not going as far back as when the weight is down on the ground, what we can do with the blanket is place it down in a fold that is light but high enough to place the heel of the hand. So if you are practicing yoga and you're in a class and you're doing all these, plank poses, vinyasas, you're doing arm balances, whatever it is that has your palms flat down dog, you can elevate the wrist, place the heel of the hand down on top of your folded blanket. There are even props that are made that are just for this. And what you want is for all of the fingers and the tips of the thumbs to be down on the ground. And what this will do is it will take you out of that deeper extension that is forced by the weight being pressed down on the ground and ground against the palm. Okay, so again, I know we've done a few things here to strengthen our extension and kind of feel for weight distribution, palms flat to the ground. If that's uncomfortable ever, if there's any pain in the wrist, if there's ever any feeling of crunchiness and discomfort, any discomfort, get a blanket or a towel, fold it up, place the heel of your hand down, and just make sure that, again, it's only the heel of the hand, base of the thumb, heel of the hand, that base of the palm. Everything else is on the mat. So you can do that from here, and you can practice these exercises from a propped, elevated position. Okay, let's move on to our next exercise, which again, you can do with a little bit of assistance here. So let's say you're doing this with the blanket. We're turning the fingertips out, keeping the heels of the hands either elevated or down. And now we're going to start to make bigger circles. Partly so that we can move the rest of the body, but also so that we can, again, feel for some shift in distribution of weight. And then make the circles the other way. Check in with your shoulders and relax them onto the back of the body. And come back to center, shoulders just above the wrists, and start to shift slightly to the side and then shift to the other side. This will start to get you more stretch through the flexor part of your forearms, the front of your forearms. And I'm practicing right now having my wrists elevated, which is really getting into some stretch through the fingers. If that's the case for you, feel free to curl your fingers lightly if that's not feeling good for you. Okay, let's come back to the middle and pause here. And if you wanted, you could bend your elbows and just take this a little bit deeper through the higher, meatier part of your forearm. Engage your shoulders on your back, pull in your ribs. Then push the ground away, straighten your arms, and start to turn your fingertips as much towards your knees as you can, which may not be all the way, and that's okay. Now, if you were looking for the assistance here from your blanket, you would move it forward and shift it so that when you flip your hands around, you have that elevation of the wrists. Yeah, and then from here, we're going to do something similar to what we've already done, but in a different position. We're going to shift the hips back, and as they come up, or as the hips go back, the heels of the hands can come up. And when we shift forward, we place them back down. And as you do this, I want you to think about engaging your hands and engaging your forearms. To engage your hands, think about your fingertips and thumb tips, right? They are helping you contract, flexing through the fingers and engaging through the palms. And you can even isometrically engage your forearms. So without moving anything, right, you could tone your forearm muscles as you do this, which creates just a light bit of muscular support. Okay, let's come back to neutral. Let's place the wrists back down on the ground and start to turn your hands forward. come up high onto the tips of your fingers. If you've got a blanket set up under your hands, go ahead and move that off to the side so that your fingertips can be flat on the ground. We're just going to elevate the palms, elevate the wrists a little bit again. And we're heading into completing this little wrist class, so just kind of notice what you're feeling here. Go ahead and carefully plant your palms back down. If you're using your blanket underneath your wrists to elevate them, go ahead and bring the blanket back in for your practice. And from here, we're now going to flip the backs of the hands down so that we can get some of that same stretch and activity in the backs of the forearms. So you can totally do this on top of your blanket. You're going to flip one hand over at a time. You can do this one hand at a time. You don't have to flip both over at the same time, especially if this is really, really intense, and really thinking about how you are essentially going to put your weight down onto the back of your back of your hand, back of your wrist, which is pretty unusual. Okay, so if this feels okay, feel free to flip the other wrist over. If it doesn't feel okay, don't. Okay, and then while you're here, spin your forearms just side to or back and forth, left and right. Okay, if you're doing one forearm, go ahead and start to make your way to the other to switch. And then you can change the position by turning the fingertips to face each other. And do the same thing here. A little bit of rotation through the arms, rotating the arm bones. If you look at your inner elbows, you can see how the rotation is happening. Or you can watch the rotation happen, right? The inner elbow can move in more or forward more. And then let's flip back over one hand at a time so that we're high on the tips of the fingers and elevating again, just getting out of that deep flexion and or extension of the wrist. We're coming up into a position way high on the tips of the fingers. And then separate your knees, point the toes in and back, hips toward the heels for a child's pose with the fingertips down and the wrists lifted. Relax your head, relax your shoulders, relax your face. Take a few breaths with your palms flat, fingertips spread lightly. Gentle breaths in and out of the nose. And then start to walk your hands back, press yourself up, and we'll finish with one more wrist stretch from a seated position. So go ahead and meet me in a seat again. And from here, we're going to take the hands out one more time. Now I'm going to actually do this. Turn your palms to face each other. And take your thumbs towards your shoulders, and then take your pinky tips towards your armpits. And try to keep this isolated in the wrists. Okay, let's go for one more. Thumbs toward the shoulders, pinky tips toward the ribs or the armpits. And then fingertips facing forward. Now I'm going to cross my right arm over my left. And then I'm going to turn my palms to face each other. Interlace all of the fingers and thumbs and pause. Let's roll the shoulders down the back of the body. Firm your forearms And then pull your knuckles toward your sternum. Okay, pause here, just check in, make sure that we're in a place that we're familiar. Okay, or maybe not familiar, but we're in a place that we feel like we're following. Okay, so interlaced fingers, arms straight, and then knuckles toward the chest. Now I'm going to take the knuckles up. This may be where you stop. Maybe you take the knuckles forward and begin to straighten the arms more. Please do not force yourself deeper into the stretch if it does not feel appropriate for the body. Check in with yourself as you begin to maybe straighten the arms. Maybe. Hang out here for a couple of deep breaths. There's a deep twist for the wrists. To come out, draw the knuckles toward the chest. Take it slow. And then start unfolding. Knuckles go forward. Release the clasp of your hands. And then lower the hands down. And if you'd like, you can make a few wrist circles. And then we're going to switch sides. I'm going to reach the hands out again. Cross the left forearm over the right. Spin the palms to face each other. So the pinkies are up, yeah, and the thumbs are down. Interlace all of your fingers once more. Okay, here, roll the shoulders down, contract lightly through the forearms, and then pull the knuckles toward the sternum. Pause there for a second, reassess if you need to. And then knuckles go up toward the sky. This, again, just might be where you stay. Maybe you go further. Maybe you take the knuckles forward. Maybe you reach the hands or the knuckles out away from you more by extending the arms. Deep breaths. On this side for me, I'm going to take myself out of it a little bit because that was way too deep for my left wrist. Please listen to your body. Relax the rest of the body. One more breath. And then we'll travel the knuckles back in. Take them down, forward, release. Make some circles with your wrists. Now let's bring the palms together in prayer just in front of the chest so that we're here. I guess the prayer would be more in front of your face. We're going to keep the palms pressing together and then open the elbows wide, but keep the shoulders down. And then we're going to spin the fingertips forward and down as much as possible. And I'm laughing because it just feels funny when I get stuck and I can't quite flip all the way, which tends to happen more and more when I'm climbing a lot and I'm training and all of those things. So if that's what's existing in your body, the goal isn't really to force it and to be in a higher level of flexibility in this position if we don't really want to be, but it is to just keep the pathways open by getting as much of this movement as possible. Okay, so let's get ourselves a few more of these rotations, pushing the palms together. And then let's pause here, interlace the fingers, press your palms all the way out. Inhale your arms up overhead, keeping the palms reaching toward the sky. Maybe you notice this feels different from when you have done this in the past. On the exhale, bring the backs of the hands against the head, elbows wide. Let's give ourselves one big breath in through the nose. Full exhale out of the nose. Inhale and release your hands. And then let it go. That is our class for today. That is our practice for today. We really got into our wrist space. If you look at your hands, and I'm so curious if your hands are as pink as mine are, but the hope is that your wrists feel maybe a little bit better. Mostly it's It's more that I'm hoping that your wrists feel like they got some love, they got some attention, and they got to move in some new ways. Hopefully we have an increase in circulation and function from doing that. Feel free to take apart a bunch of these exercises, use them, use the stretching ones for after you climb, after you work out. If you're just looking to give yourself a little bit of stretch at any other time in the day, you can do these at your desk. You can do a lot of these on an airplane. Really, really simple things that you can do no matter where you are. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, if you have any comments about the practice, something that you maybe felt, something that you are curious about, please don't hesitate to leave that in the comment section. And if you have requests, please let me know. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I hope that we continue to build awareness both on our mats in our bodies as well as elsewhere. I'll see you for the next one.